Once upon a time, in a small village nestled between rolling hills and a sparkling lake, lived a farmer and his family. The farmer had two sons, but it was his youngest that was the talk of the town, not because he was the most hardworking or the most intelligent, but because of his unusual hobby. You see, the youngest son loved cats. And not just any cats, mind you, but specifically tortoiseshell cats. He would spend his days searching far and wide for these elusive creatures, much to the annoyance of his hard-working father. "Why do you spend all your time chasing cats instead of tending to the fields?" The farmer would often grumble. A hard-working farmer does not chase cats all day, but the youngest son couldn't help himself. He had an affinity for tortoiseshell cats and their enigmatic nature, and he dreamed of one day having the largest tortoiseshell cat in the world. One day, while walking through the village, he heard some commotion and followed the sound to an open field where a crowd had gathered. In the center of the crowd stood a man with a long, white beard, and he was holding a magnificent creature in his arms. It was a tortoiseshell cat, unlike any the young man had ever seen before. Its fur was the color of burnished copper, and its eyes shone like golden coins. As the young man got closer, he heard the bearded man announce, "Whoever guesses the riddle I have prepared will receive this, my prized tortoiseshell cat." The young man's heart raced. This was his chance to finally have the most beautiful tortoiseshell cat in the world. But the riddle was a difficult one, and many villagers, including the young man's older brother, tried and failed to answer it. Finally, it was the young man's turn. He took a deep breath, stepped forward, and said, "I have an answer, sir." All eyes turned to him, and the bearded man said, "Very well, let us hear your answer." The young man hesitated for a moment, then said, "What is always coming but never arrives? What is always present but never here? What is always near but never visible?" The bearded man stroked his chin thoughtfully. That is a good guess, but it is not the answer I had in mind." The crowd murmured in agreement. The young man's face fell, and he was about to step back when his gaze fell on the cat. It met his eyes and seemed to wink. An idea struck him like lightning. He turned back to the bearded man and said, "How about this? What is more beautiful than the moon, more valuable than gold, and more elusive than a shadow?" The bearded man's eyes widened. He looked at the cat, then back at the young man and said, "Well, that is a very poetic answer, but what do you know about cats, young man?" The young man explained how he had always loved cats and how he had searched far and wide for the most beautiful tortoise-shell cat to no avail. "But you," he said, gesturing to the cat in the bearded man's arms, "you are the most beautiful cat I have ever seen. Will you come with me?" The cat purred loudly and rubbed against the young man's leg. And the bearded man, who was the cat's owner, smiled and said, "Well, that is a very sweet story, and since you are obviously a cat lover, I will give you my cat." The young man's face lit up with joy. He thanked the bearded man and cradled the cat, whose purrs seemed to vibrate with happiness, and so the young man returned home with the most beautiful tortoise-shell cat in the world. The cat, whose name was Luna, became the talk of the town. People from neighboring villages came to see her, and the young man's house was always filled with visitors. And although his father still grumbled about the amount of time his son spent with cats, he had to admit that having the most beautiful tortoise-shell cat in the world was quite an accomplishment. After all, not every day does a farmer's son win a magical cat with a riddle. From that day on, the young man continued to search for other beautiful cats, and he and Luna explored the countryside, meeting new people and making new friends. They say that wherever there is a kind and loving heart, there too a cat will purr with joy. And so the story of the young man and his beautiful bold cat became a legend, reminding everyone who heard it that sometimes the most unexpected adventures can bring the greatest rewards.